Here's the scenario that everyone fears. You're rushed to the hospital with some mortal wound, and upon arriving, they determine that you are a bigot. Maybe they saw something on social media, or for some reason, they've determined that you are racist, sexist, or making gestures of the sort, and so they deny you treatment. I think that's what people are assuming when they hear the story. The Breitbart headline says, National Health Service to deny treatment for racist or sexist language, gestures, or behavior. The story's kind of morphed a little bit, and I'm seeing people talk about it, so I think it's good to tone things down, okay? The reality is, I won't bury the lead on you guys. The National Health Service, a particular trust, it's a particular department, I suppose, is basically saying if you're abusive towards their staff, they will give you a warning, and if you continue to be abusive towards their staff, they will not treat you. That, to me, sounds totally reasonable, but there is nuance in the discussion. As Breitbart brings up, there was an instance where a biological female requested a female practitioner and was presented with a trans woman who is not female, and then things can get kind of murky. The fear then becomes, if someone comes in, you say, I would like a female doctor, and they give you a trans woman, and you say, I'm sorry, I would prefer a female, is that abuse? The question is, where's the line? I think it's a fair point to be made. When I was reading the story, I kind of got, it was an interesting idea. Imagine all hospitals being run, by the government and having these government rules, and you being denied service. If there's no competition, if there's nowhere else to go, well, you're in trouble. But let's read this and let's talk about the nuance, because I got to admit, this is a Breitbart story. They're not wrong, but I think it's fair to point out, I've got the actual website pulled up. Man, let's be real. You can't walk up to somebody at the hospital and start screaming profanities or insults or generally being racist and making gestures and things like that. I'll tell you what, man, if I was a doctor, actually, no, if I was a doctor, I'd probably treat you no matter what. Like if I saw somebody on the ground and they were bleeding out, I know first aid. And so if they started saying a bunch of really offensive things, I'd probably still try and help them. But I think that's true for most doctors as well. They might say, you're being mean, but they reserve the right to warn you. So if you have a minor complaint or injury or something, and your life's not in danger, and you start saying a bunch of rude and offensive and abusive things, man, I'll tell you there's the door. Don't let it hit your butt on the way out. Let's read the story. So this is from Breitbart, and they say, a National Health Service trust has announced that it will withdraw treatment from patients it deems to be racist or sexist. Full stop. No, not true. Technically true. It's if you're abusing the staff, they'll first give you a warning, and it's like a yellow card and then a red card. Now, this could lead to exploitation, and it could lead to, it could be a potential slippery slope. But we'll read this, and then I'll show you the actual, what they actually say. The North Bristol NHS Trust announced that patients will be subject to a sports-style disciplinary yellow card and then final red card, in which treatment would be withdrawn as soon as is safe on its official website. The policy would cover not just threatening and offensive language, but also racist and sexist language, gestures, or behavior. More generally, as well as malicious allegations. A rather troubling caveat, given the NHS has in the past been entangled in a large-scale malpractice scandals, which hospitals and staff have initially denied. They say, quote, we have staff from many different backgrounds from all over the world, and we pride ourselves on our commitment to equality, which is a fundamental value of the NHS, commented Andrea Young, Chief Executive for North Bristol NHS Trust. We're sending a strong signal that any racism or discrimination is completely unacceptable. We want staff to challenge and report it, and we want everyone to know that it will have consequences. How low the bar for deeming behavior discriminatory and sufficiently offensive to withdraw treatment is not spelled out in explicit terms. But I don't think that necessarily means we need to be alarmist about it. I will also add, it's in the UK. We have a private system and we also have a constitution. So I'm not sure if we did have government, if we were using a national health service, pretty sure you could say racist things and they couldn't do anything about it because we have the First Amendment. There's a line though, right? So we have free speech. If you go out into the street and start yelling offensive things, the cops probably won't do anything. But if you start yelling them directly at a person over and over again and they tell you to stop and you don't, you might get disorderly conduct. You might actually get assault depending on the area you're in. So yes, if you go to somebody and start yelling something like the moon is made of cheese, it's an innocuous statement. But if you're yelling it at someone and you won't stop and you won't leave them alone, The cops will tell you to leave, otherwise you can get charged with disorderly conduct. So think about a hospital in the U.S. This is why, I'll put it this way. The UK is lost. I'm being hyperbolic here, but man, after the Dankula stuff, it's like, I don't know how Ricky Gervais exists. Like, he's made some very offensive jokes recently. And now, the bigger concern here is, how snowflakey will these doctors be? So actually, we'll go through the rules. I want to walk this back a little bit because they do say it's about abuse, but I do think it's fair to point out how snowflakey the UK is. And they actually arrested a dude because he made a silly YouTube video, okay? So take that into consideration when you read this, and the context then becomes a little more worrying. But again, I'm trying to be a little tepid here. They say, in late 2017, an NHS patient who requested a female nurse to carry out a cervical smear complained when the hospital sent a person with an obviously male appearance, clothes, cropped hair, a male facial appearance and voice, large number of tattoos, and facial stubble who insisted, "My gender is not male, I'm a transsexual." It is not clear whether the patient could have fallen foul of the British policy had it been in place and the nurse had chosen to take offense. And nor is it clear how far the trust's assurances. I really don't. I want to be reasonable and say, I don't think. Well, actually, that was a complicated story, and I think it actually did get kind of hectic. So I'll just stop right there. We'll just keep reading. They say that it is not clear how far the trust's assurances that will only withdraw treatment once clinically safe extend, and if patients could, for example, be denied diagnostic procedures or so-called routine operations such as hip replacements, for which many patients have to wait 8 months or more. So they say that they don't know, nor is it clear how far the trust assurances will withdraw treatment, and if patients could, for example, be denied diagnostic procedures. To what extent is safety, is the question. So I want to make sure it's clear here. One of the big challenges with the modern social justice push is that they're not just changing the definition of racism or like white privilege, they're changing the definition of safety. They're calling words violence. So if you say something that someone gets offended by and you don't realize it, could they then be like, that's a warning, don't talk again? And then are you forced to just zip it and do nothing and hope they treat you? Or you might get some salty social justice authoritarian who tells you, I have the power, do as I say or else. British state authorities have previously proved somewhat overzealous in their enforcement of political correctness, with foster parents caring for 3, quote, not Indigenous white British children, having them taken away by Labour-run Rotherham Borough Council in 2012 because they were members of UKIP. Whoa. Strategic Director of Children and Young People Services Joyce Thacker said she was concerned that UKIP was opposed to mass migration and the active promotion of multiculturalism, meaning UKIP members could not meet the British children's cultural and ethnic needs. That's ridiculous. Another NHS trust for the area, the University Hospitals Bristol NHS Foundation Trust, has previously been criticized for ordering the removal of the British flag from security staff stab vests after someone complained the country's national banner was offensive. And therein lies the big problem. To what degree will they take action if what they're saying is offensive? So here we have it. ntb.nhs.uk. North Bristol NHS Trust, they say, North Bristol hands red card to racism. North Bristol NHS Trust has today launched a Red Card to Racism campaign to protect all staff from any discrimination. Following a national trend, staff have reported that incidents of racism on wards have increased over the past year, so the hospital will be enforcing its zero tolerance policy against abusive behavior. Now, here's what I want to say, right? I think it's fair to say, well, hold on. They're talking about if you're abusing the staff. And I got to be honest, I can understand if you're having like a psychotic break or some kind of like panic attack and you're dying and you start saying a bunch of crazy things. I think most doctors would still treat you. But if we're talking about people who are coming for routine checkups or non-life-threatening procedures and they decide to start spewing racism at a staff member, I tell you what, man, like I said earlier, I'll walk. If you come to my place of business and disrespect me in any way, I'm like, get out. I'm not going to provide you with service. I'm here to do a job. We don't got to be friends, but we do have to cooperate, right? I need you to show me your arm so I can reset the bone because your arm's broken. You want to start spewing racist, sexist, whatever? Dude, respect. Be respectful, okay? You got people here trying to help you. But the issue then becomes where I actually am more concerned is what defines abuse. The bigger problem I think the context should have been included in these articles from these right-wing sites. Look, man, on the surface, this is fine. Like, seriously, you can't go into an American hospital and start shouting racist things at somebody. They'll kick you out. The problem here is how delicate and dainty the UK has become, and that's what, to me, is more worrisome. Are they going to call it abuse if you use a word that you didn't realize? If you don't say Latinx, are they going to get mad, right? And who determines what is or isn't offensive? As we know, most of these like SJW types are white, privileged, college-educated young people who are offended on behalf of somebody else. So what happens if... I'll play this game. This is why I think this actually does warrant a little bit of concern. Remember that woman who posted rap lyrics and she got arrested and charged in the UK? I know we all know the story of Dankula, but a woman posted rap lyrics. What if someone, say, is black and they use the N-word in a culturally normal way that we experience, like in music, like they say the word? Could a doctor who's not black be offended and say that's racist and deny treatment to that person? In the US, we got a First Amendment. I don't think we have to worry about something like that for the most part. But it is true that you can be arrested or kicked out for a lot of reasons. The bigger concern, I'll wrap this up here to reiterate for the third time now. Is the UK just too dainty? Are they too delicate and afraid, and they're going to call literally anything abuse? If you get a doctor you're uncomfortable with and say, I'd prefer a different doctor, they say, why is that? Is it because he's white and you're not, or you're white and he's not? Or are they going to conflate things? Are they going to find racism? This is the challenge. There are a lot of things that I think we want to implement. However, the slippery slope exists. And it's not so much about like a slippery slope, this idea that it gets faster and faster. It's about you're walking in a direction where things could actually start getting really, really bad. This is why I'm not surprised when Republicans say don't even give an inch. And it's unfortunate. I want to see, here's what I see. Hey, we could stand to do some left-wing type things, like a public option in our country, but the left is screeching for the most insane things possible. So the right over there is like, we're not budging because we know if we give an inch, they'll take a mile. And I can't blame them. They're right. You give an inch to take a mile. We have social justice, and then all of a sudden it becomes this weird authoritarian insanity. So now you see this, and I say, on the surface, well, yeah, don't be racist. Like, look, man, it is not your right to say racist things in a hospital when someone's trying to treat you. I know it's complicated. I believe in the US it might actually be a right to an extent. Like, you can insult a doctor, and actually, no, in the US, so our hospitals are mostly private. I think if we had a publicly funded hospital, you could probably say whatever you want, so long as you're not crossing that line into disorderly conduct. But it really, really is complicated. There's no perfect line where we can see. Now, for the most part, I don't want to act like the left does and says, like, there's no line, it's nuanced. No. We know where incitement lies. We know where racism is an opinion versus a threat. However, we do have disorderly conduct, and that's typically what they'll take you out for. So if you're in a hospital and you're disruptive in some capacity, it might be endangering the safety of others. I don't think calling someone an insult would do that, but I think, listen, I'll tell you one thing, man. You'd have to be a special kind of stupid to need a doctor and then insult that doctor. Because I'll tell you what, if I was getting my car fixed and I started insulting and degrading the mechanic, don't be surprised if your car it gets fixed and might have some problems. Like, look, you're trusting something of yours to somebody else. Give them the respect. You don't got to be friends, but you can cooperate, right? Now imagine you've got someone working on your actual body. I would want to make sure that individual is as comfortable as possible. I want to make sure that individual is going to do a really, really good job because, well, to be honest, I've grown quite fond of living. And I'd like that to remain the case. That being said, hey, man, when I'm at the doctor, I'm like, yeah, I trust you. You know what I mean? Doctors are not always right. Some doctors might get overly offended, and it's hard to know, right? So I can understand the concern here. But I'll wrap this up. On the surface, nothing to worry about. But for those of us that have been paying attention to the news, I think you might actually have something to worry about. And this is the big, big problem. How do you actually codify rules saying don't abuse our staff? That includes racism without, with all these stories about how absurd it's become with police going to people's houses because of social media posts. Like, the UK is in a really, really weird place. And I got to say, man, you take the context of Dankula and others, combine it with this, and this does seem kind of bad. But I don't know. I don't live in the UK, and I'm grateful for it because we have constitutional rights here, and they don't. Too bad. But we're heading in that direction. Hopefully we don't go too far. Let me know what you think. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. YouTube.com/TimCastNews, and I will see you all. YouTube.com/TimCast at 4 p.m., and I will see you there.